I am the most wanted man in America. And it all started when I discovered something I never should have known. Something so secret, so dangerous that now my life is at risk. I was trained to serve my country, to fight for its safety. But what I learned while on a mission in the Middle East was not just information, it was a war secret that could change the fate of the world. The truth about the war between Iran and Israel is more complex than anyone could have imagined. And the only reason I am alive now is because President Trump is the only one who can protect me. It all happened so quickly. What started out as a simple observation mission quickly turned into a nightmare. I was sent on a reconnaissance mission in the Middle East, where Iran and Israel were locked in a silent conflict, a war that was taking place behind the scenes, far from the public eye. But what I discovered wasn't just about the military advances. It wasn't about the confrontations that were spreading between these two powers. What I discovered was something much more sinister. Iran wasn't just preparing to attack Israel. They were preparing to attack the United States as well. What's more, they were counting on a secret network of allies to make sure no one could stop them. I never imagined that when I returned home with this information, my life would become a living hell. When I returned to the United States, I took with me proof of what Iran was planning. What I knew was too dangerous to ignore, and I knew that by exposing it, I would be tampering with something much bigger than I could control. The US government was somehow ignoring the true magnitude of what was happening in the Middle East, and that put me in an untenable position. They didn't want the truth to come out, and I soon realized that my life was at risk. Most shocking of all, I knew something that could be devastating to national security, and what terrified me most was that, to some extent, I had become a threat to the US government itself. So I asked myself, what is the price of truth? What would you do if you were in my shoes, knowing that the information you carry could change everything, but it could also destroy your life? The secret I had uncovered was not just about Iran and Israel, but about a covert operation involving global powers, stealthy diplomacy, and a plan that, if revealed, would shake the balance of power around the world. I know you must be wondering, why didn't the United States government act sooner? I asked that question too. Why, when the evidence was there for all to see, did no one want to hear the truth? What I had discovered was not a simple conspiracy. It was a geopolitical ploy that would put Iran in a dominant strategic position, poised to strike in ways the entire world could not foresee. And here I was at the center of it all, being forced to face the reality that if I spoke out, my life would be at risk. But if I didn't speak out, what would happen? How could I live with myself, knowing that the truth could save thousands of lives, but could also destroy my own? Now the big question is, what would you do if you were the only one who knew that Iran, with its silent ally, was about to launch an attack that could destroy the world balance? Would you stay silent, fearing the repercussions? Or would you make the decision to expose the truth, even though you knew it could put your life at risk? Because that is exactly what happened to me. And now I find myself the most wanted man in the United States, simply because I know too much. I am fighting for my life, but I am also fighting for the truth. I am not a hero, I am not a villain. I am just a veteran who accidentally discovered something that changed everything. And now no one wants me to talk about it. The only thing I know is that only President Trump has the power to save me now. He is the only one who can protect me from the forces that are trying to silence me. But the question remains, how would the President of the United States react when he learned that the truth about Iran and Israel could be the key to avoiding a world war? What would you do if you were in my position? Put yourself in my shoes for a moment. I am an American veteran, someone who has spent years on the battlefield facing dangers and traumas that others cannot even imagine. I have been in scenarios where life and death intertwine, where the only thing that keeps you standing is courage. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for what I discovered. The mission I was assigned to seemed simple: gather information about the growing tension between Iran and Israel. I was just another man on a covert operation, or so I thought. Little did I know that this mission would turn into the biggest revelation of my life, and unbeknownst to me would put my name on the United States Most Wanted list. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was in the Middle East, with a team trained to carry out a reconnaissance mission. Iran was in a constant confrontation with Israel, and tensions in the region were rising. The initial objective was simple: to gather information, to find out what Iran was planning in order to prevent either country from starting a war. But I soon realized that there was much more at stake. What Iran was really doing, and what was being manipulated in the shadows, was something much more serious, and that no one expected, not even the United States government itself. I was sent on a mission to gather data, but instead of just hearing about military movements, what I found was something much deeper: a web of manipulation that extended beyond the Middle East, involving secret allies and a plan to destabilize not just the region but the world's major powers. The war between Iran and Israel was not just a direct confrontation, it was a geopolitical move, with implications that could alter the global balance of power. But what really scared me was when I realized that Iran was not just preparing to attack Israel. What was being orchestrated behind the scenes went beyond a simple conventional attack. They were quietly building alliances with other countries, infiltrating the global scene, manipulating international politics so that at the right moment they could launch a catastrophic attack. And I, who had been assigned a simple observation mission, found myself at the center of a much larger plot, one that involved military and political strategies so complex that if all were revealed, it could destabilize the global balance. For weeks I was inside Iran, observing and gathering information that made no sense at first glance. They were developing nuclear weapons and creating an infiltration network with hidden allies. But what shocked me was that their operation was not just about destroying Israel. It was not just a territorial or religious war. Iran had bigger plans, much bigger. They were developing a strategy that aimed to directly hit the United States and other major powers without ever firing a single missile. I knew that when I returned to the United States, I would have to deal with the magnitude of the information I had. The idea that Iran was preparing to attack not only Israel, but was also infiltrating the international system in a way that could undermine global security, was something I had to tell. But at the same time, I knew that revealing this truth would put me in danger. The United States government was more focused on preventing a conventional war between the two countries. But what I had uncovered could lead to a much larger world war, and in some ways I knew that my name was already on the line. What Iran's leader was trying to hide from everyone, what he was hiding from the world, was not just a conflict between two nations. It was a network of secret allies. A silent, strategic attack that had the power to dismantle not just the Middle East, but the entire global security system. Now, with this information in my hands, the real question was, how would I make sure this was heard? How could I convince the people around me that what I was saying was not just a theory, but a terrifying truth, and that this secret plan was about to come to fruition? I knew this information would not be easy to believe. No one, especially the US government, was prepared to hear that Iran was no longer preparing just to attack Israel, but that they had engineered a geopolitical war that could spread across Asia and even affect the West. I knew my mission had changed in an unexpected way. I was no longer just gathering intelligence. I was now on a life-or-death mission, trying to prevent a catastrophic attack from being launched against the United States and its allies. Now more than ever, the decision to reveal the truth would not be easy. What I knew could save millions of lives, but it could also destroy me. The question kept repeating itself in my head, hammering at my conscience. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you risk everything, knowing that the truth you carry could save or destroy the future of a nation? I knew I could not simply turn my back on this responsibility. The truth had to come out, no matter the cost. The situation in Iran grew more tense with each passing minute. At first, the mission seemed like just another one of many. A simple rescue mission, a reconnaissance mission, with no major surprises. But everything changed the moment I entered the facility that was hiding the truth. The truth that Iran's leader was desperately trying to hide from the world. What I found there was much more than just weapons. What Iran was preparing was not just a threat to Israel, but a silent, orchestrated attack on the global security system, including the United States. It was there in a secluded camp in the heart of Iran that I learned the details of the covert operation. Iran's leader was quietly forging alliances with other countries and factions around the world. This wasn't just a military attack. It wasn't just missiles and bombs. What Iran was planning involved a series of political manipulations and strategic infiltrations, creating a global network that would not only weaken the United States, but also destabilize the international balance of power. They were laying the groundwork for a war, but in a way that no one could have foreseen, an invisible war in which the enemy would not be visible, and attacks would be carried out in the shadows, without the global powers even being able to react in time. I felt as if I had stumbled into a nightmare. With every step, with every document I found, it became clearer that Iran was not just preparing for an attack, but plotting a war of global proportions. They were assembling a secret network of allies who, when the time was right, would band together to weaken the United States, Israel, and even other Western countries, creating a war from within. Iran's leader wanted to destroy global security systems without having to drop a single bomb. He was laying the groundwork for a silent war, a political and military infiltration that would shake the foundations of the great powers. I knew that if I didn't get out of there with this information, the world would be in grave danger. But the question was, how could I get this truth to the United States government? I was a simple veteran, far from the highest spheres of politics, but I knew what was at stake. The leader of Iran knew that I had seen everything they were preparing, and the moment I escaped from that facility, my life would be at risk. What I was carrying with me were not just documents and reports. I was carrying the truth, something that the entire world needed to know, but that at the same time could be my death sentence. I was no longer just rescuing a hostage. I was at the center of a global operation that could change everything. I knew that if I could escape with this information and get it back to the United States, the future of millions of people could be saved. But what scared me most was not what I was taking back. What scared me was what I might face if I tried to share this information with the government. The doubt, the distrust, the resistance I would likely face as I tried to convince the authorities that Iran was about to unleash something that could destroy world peace. It consumed me. At that moment, the mission was no longer about a simple rescue or espionage operation. It was a fight for survival in a world that was about to be transformed by a silent war that no one knew was about to begin. Iran was not just preparing for a physical attack. They were creating a network of disinformation and political infiltration that would make it impossible for major powers to react in time. This was bigger than any conventional war. It was a plan to destroy global trust, and worst of all, no one knew about it except me. As I tried to escape with the evidence and information I had in my hands, I felt the pressure of knowing that my life no longer had any value. The stakes were much bigger than me. But as I moved through the shadows, I felt one thing clear. I had to get the truth to the United States government. It was the only chance I had to save what was left of the world order. I knew that if this information fell into the wrong hands, the future of all of us would be compromised. Now you may be wondering, how was I, a simple veteran, the only one to figure this out? How did a simple hostage rescue mission turn into a race against time to uncover a global threat that no one, not even the United States government, knew was coming? The answer is simple. War is not just about weapons. Sometimes the real enemy is in the shadows, manipulated by those who want to control the future without anyone noticing. And that is what I found, and now I am being hunted, not only by Iran but also by the United States itself, because I know too much. Now the question is, what would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you face the truth, with all that it entails, even knowing that your life was at risk? I knew that my mission was far from over. I was carrying the truth, something that could destroy everything that Iran was trying to hide, but the risk of telling the truth also meant putting my own life at risk. When I finally escaped from the Iranian compound, the sense of relief was quickly replaced by an overwhelming pressure. I knew that I was now carrying something much bigger than just information about an attack. I was carrying the truth, a truth that if exposed could change everything. The war I had discovered in the Middle East was not a conventional war, not a battle for territory or ideology. It was something more sinister, more insidious, and worst of all, Iran was playing a geopolitical game that had global implications. I knew the information I was holding was devastating, but at the same time, I knew no one would believe me. I wasn't just a veteran with a history of war. I was now the most wanted man in the United States. And not just by Iran, but by the American government itself. No one could imagine that the discoveries I had made were real. I was the only one who knew what was going on. And the truth was that even with all the evidence I had, the only way to avoid disaster was to convince those at the top of the political hierarchy that what I was saying was true. It was when I managed to get in touch with the White House, with the help of some allies I had managed to trust, that I began to realize the gravity of the situation. The first reaction I received was one of skepticism. How could someone like me, a mere veteran, have discovered such a huge secret? How could I, with only the evidence I had, convince an entire government that Iran was on the verge of unleashing something that could destroy world peace? Trump, as everyone knows, is a man who is not afraid to make tough decisions. But even he fell silent when he heard what I had to say. He knew something was up, but he never imagined that Iran had gone so far in its covert operations. I could see in his eyes that he was processing the gravity of the situation, but the only thing he could do at that moment was ask me to be more specific, to delve deeper into the details. He asked me, "Are you sure about this? How can we confirm these allegations? What would you suggest as our next step?" I knew the situation was about to escalate. I knew that American officials would doubt me until the very end, until it was too late. It was at this point that I truly found myself caught between truth and consequences. What I was revealing was not just a threat to Iran or Israel. It was a direct threat to the security of the United States, and not just militarily, but politically and strategically. The answer to that question was not simple. It was not enough to simply gather evidence, because I knew it would be manipulated and distorted. We had to act and act fast. Iran was forming alliances with factions around the world. They were infiltrating other nations to undermine global security, to ensure that when the time came, no one would be able to react in time. I knew that if Iran were successful, the American defense structure would be ruined, and with it world peace. As the meeting ended, what became clear to me was how complex the Iranian plan was. They were not just preparing for a direct attack on Israel or the United States. They were creating a web of manipulation and disinformation so vast that even their closest allies could be tricked into supporting their actions without knowing the full extent of their manipulation. Iran was using the capabilities of cyber warfare and political infiltration to ensure that when the time came, no one could stop the offensive. I knew that at that moment the fate of a world war was at stake. The future of the United States, Israel, and indeed the entire world depended on how we responded to this. Trump, aware of the gravity of the situation, knew that his options were limited, but he also knew that he had to act quickly. Every minute that passed made us more vulnerable, and I, a mere veteran, was now at the center of it all. The big question was, what would we do now? Act before Iran completed its infiltration and attack operation, or wait for more evidence and risk a world war? The decision was in the hands of the United States government, but my mission was not yet over. I knew that the next step would have to be decisive, and that the repercussions of each move would affect everyone's security. The future of world peace now, more than ever, depended on swift and effective action. I knew that by exposing everything I knew, my life would never be the same, but the biggest risk was to the future of all of us. I had a difficult choice to make. I could stay silent, wait for the world to find out in a more catastrophic way, or I could keep fighting for the truth to be heard, even if it meant risking everything. And most importantly, what would you do? Comment below, I want to know your opinion. What would you do knowing what I know? Would you act immediately to save lives, or would you hesitate and wait for others to solve it? The future of the world is in our hands. What would you do if you were in my position? That moment when I revealed the truth to President Trump was not just a turning point in my mission, it was a turning point for the future of the entire world. The weight of the information I carried was immeasurable. I knew that from that moment on, the decisions he and the United States government made would determine whether the world would remain at peace or enter a cycle of irreversible destruction. Iran had infiltrated the country so strategically, with such an intricate plan, that the only way to prevent a global catastrophe was to act quickly and precisely. Yet while Trump's response was urgent, he knew that the situation required more than a simple military move. What he had revealed was not just a conventional attack, it was a strategy to weaken the United States at home and destabilize global security through secret alliances and political manipulation. Iran was not just attacking physically, they were creating a global scenario that could be triggered at any moment, and the West was unprepared to respond. But as always, there are those who doubt the gravity of a situation until it is too late, and that is exactly what I faced. The fact that I am an American veteran, someone with limited experience in covert operations, made many question my word, as if it were impossible for someone like me to have figured out the magnitude of such a complex plan. The government, before acting, required concrete evidence and, even more so, wanted to ensure that we were not simply reacting based on disinformation. The implications were immense. And then, in a moment of clarity and action, Trump made a pivotal decision. He asked me to go public, to present the evidence I had uncovered to the world. He knew that to stop Iran, we needed to not only act domestically, but also reveal to the world the true threat that was being hidden. My mission to protect global security now extended beyond the borders of the United States. It was a global mission. I didn't know how the world would react. But what I did know was that with the truth in my hands, I could not remain silent. What Iran was planning was not something that could be ignored. It was no longer a matter of politics or military strategy. It was a matter of survival for all countries that might be affected. If we, the United States, did not take firm action, the silent war that Iran was preparing would become a reality for the entire world. Now I ask you, what would you do if you knew that the future of your nation, and even the world, was in your hands? If you had the truth, but were being hunted by those who wanted to prevent its disclosure, would you make the decision to act, knowing the risk would be high? Or would you remain silent, waiting for others to take control of the situation? I knew what I had to do: act, reveal, and make sure the world knew of the threat before it was too late. Now it's your turn to act. If you believe the truth needs to come out and that the future of all of us is at stake, please like and share this video. We need more people to know what's going on behind the scenes, and for the world to prepare for what's to come. If you want to continue following this story and see what happens next, subscribe to the channel. The fight for truth and global security is just beginning, and you won't want to miss what comes next. Join us. The future is in our hands, and together we can make a difference.